Hello, I'm Ikrititi, and today, as part of Gamera's 60th anniversary celebration, we'll be covering the 8th film in the series, the most infamous, titled Gamera the Super Monster. World cinema in 1980 was Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, which is quite fitting considering the subtle similarities between the alien ship in the film in question and the Imperial Star Destroyers from Star Wars, returning the world cinema. It also saw the release of such classics as The Shining, Airplane, The Blues Brothers, and Friday the 13th. After the premiere of the 7th film, Gamera vs. Zigra, Dai went bankrupt, leaving no one to release full Gamera films. I won't go into detail, but in 1974 a new company was founded, also with Dai in its name, and held the rights to the work of the original Dai. They kept it going for a few years until they decided they could boost their budget by releasing a new Gamera film. At the same time, they didn't want to spend too much money on it, so they came up with a scientific idea, one already used in the previous installments, using already recorded kaiju scenes. However, when they were previously used, they were merely addition to a large number of scenes featuring new kaiju. Gamera Super Monster is different. It doesn't feature any new kaiju, and only about 2 minutes of new Gamera footage are new, according to Wikizilla. The rest of the kaiju scenes are cut from all the previous films, so we see Barugon, Gauss, Vira, Guiron, Jigger, and Zigra. In fact, in much further scenes, there are even scenes connecting the anime with Gamera. Specifically, you can see Gamera with Yamato from the space battleship Yamato, and with Galaxy Express 999 from the series of the same name. If you are a fan and were waiting for a new Gamera film, it could have been a real disappointment. Kaiju films are, above all, about kaiju, and there's nothing new here. But it is also worth considering other perspectives. The film was set in the USA in 1982, and on television, so American Gamera fans got some new kaiju. The previous film, the Gamera vs. Zigra, didn't air on American television until 1987, so there wasn't much opportunity for Americans to see it, and Zigra scenes from Gamera Super Monster were therefore new to them. An even more interesting perspective is that of Polish audiences. None of the Gamera films were released in Polish cinemas, and I think I'm actually quite certain that none of them were broadcast in television. And from that perspective, Gamera Super Monster must have been a very different impression, as it wasn't a completely recycled world, but a kaiju film featuring a huge variety of kaiju. Not one, but 6, if you count Gamera, 7 different kaiju. The plot itself, the actual action, after a static introduction, begins just like A New Hope. We see stars and a ship flies above us, as I already mentioned, definitively looking like a Star Destroyer. And then the action shifts to Earth and shows us 3 superheroines. Yes, we have superheroes here. And the royalty and, in fact, a unique feature on this film, which doesn't appear in any other. 3 women with superpowers join forces with the obligatory element of Gamera film, a child, but this time we only have one boy. Together they help Gamera and everything else as well. Well, almost. The treat is averted, but at the cost of Gamera's life. A strange move, if this film was supposed to be a financial success, which they probably wanted to follow up later, but that's not for me to judge. Easter egg time. The creators had the balls to include a punch in Godzilla nose in that not so high quality work. In one scene, Gamera knocks over a poster of a reptile that resembles Godzilla and the word Sayonara Dojilla. Another interesting fact worth noting is that it's the second attempt of the 8th Gamera film. After Gamera vs. Zigra, the plans were completely different. The working title of the film that was supposed to be made was Gamera vs. the Two-Headed Monster W. However, nothing came out it due to the studio bankruptcy. And the sequel we got is the topic of this video. Some consider the 1991 short Gamera vs. Garasharp, created by USA, to be related to this planned installment, but the director himself denied this, stating that the short and his protagonist, Garasharp, were created specifically for the Gamera Permanent Preservation Town Laserdisc set in which it was published. Previous films had many actors who appeared in several different Gamera movies. In this case, likely to accompany bankruptcy, we only have one such actor. We are talking about Yuzo Hayanawa, who appeared as Kawajiri in Gamera vs. Barugon and as policeman here. IMDb claims that Toru Kawai played Gamera, but no other source confirms that, so it's probably more on an error or disparate than fact. Wikizilla lists him as assistant monster operator. You can absolutely confirm the returns or are the director and screenwriter of the previous Gamera films, Noriaki Uwasa and Nissan Takanashi. In terms of cultural references, this film was featured in episode 8 of season 3 of the Elvira Movies Macabre series, released in 1983. Much later, it was also shown on the Cinema Insomnia program as part of its 3rd season in 2007. Physical releases are of course standard. We received VHS, DVDs, Blu-ray discs, editions which choose this film, 2 or more movies, including this collecting all of the Showa era films, as well as all 12 films in total. I talked about the latter at length in the video about Gamera the Giant Monster, so I will only briefly touch on it here. The Art of Edition include a version with the original Japanese audio, an English dub, and a version with commentary by Richard Pusateri. The German release has started with Frankenstein indeed, of course, which translates to Gamera's fight against Frankenstein monster. Online availability is similar to other Showa era films. In the US, this film is available on many platforms, including the free website tubi.tv. Similar to Gamera vs. Zigra, we didn't get a manga adaptation released that concurrently with the film, but we did get one 50 years later, as part of the 8-volume series adapting all the films of the Showa era in the 1995. The final volume was an adaptation of this film. In the years 1994 and 1995, we also got a comic book that served as a sort of sequel to this film and a bridge between it and Gamera the Guardian of the Universe, but I will talk more about it in the video about this film. As for merchandise, it's quite sparse as there aren't any new kaiju, but we can say that the set featuring Gamera and all 6 of the Showa era enemies are, in a sense, a reference to Gamera Super Monster. In fact, the only toy I found that clearly references this film is the model of the Xanon spaceship. Gamera the Super Monster marked the end of an era, and at the same time, set the stage for one of the greatest kaiju comeback ever. What about Gamera the Guardian of the Universe I will talk in the next recording. For now, that's all. Thank you for watching, leave a like and subscribe if you liked it, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Bye!